Americans learn to love the Brazilian way to pay. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and you are listening to Plain English lesson number 471. Here at Plain English, JR and I help you upgrade your English with current events and trending topics. Who exactly is JR? He's the producer, and he's the one working hard behind the scenes to make sure you get the audio on time every week, that the website is updated with all our great content too. Now, speaking of which, the URL for this lesson is plainenglish.com/471, and there is a lot to discover there in addition to the audio lesson. Now, coming up today, a new type of fintech company is offering a convenient new way to pay for goods and services online. This will sound familiar to our Brazilian listeners. It's called Buy Now, Pay Later. The specific product is new, at least for us, but the concept is as old as time, and so are the drawbacks, as some in the TikTok generation are starting to learn. In the second half of the lesson, I'll show you what it means to think twice. And we have a song of the week. Let's get started. I don't have to tell you that online shopping is a big deal here in the US as in many other parts of the world. In 2021, American consumers spent $870 billion in online commerce. And in recent years, as those shoppers got to the checkout page, they started to notice a new payment option. It's called Buy Now, Pay Later. The option is offered by new companies with names like Klarna, Afterpay, and Affirm. It works like this. Consumers can buy a product for, say, $200. But instead of paying $200 up front, they can split it into 4 monthly installments of $50 each and pay no interest. These companies market themselves as a friendly way to pay. Their names, websites, colors, marketing, and messaging are all bright, positive, upbeat, fresh, friendly, and modern, a contrast to the stuffy, restrictive, rules-laden world of banks and traditional credit cards. And this new payment option is a hit with Generation Z. Consumers like Buy Now, Pay Later for a few reasons. The first one is obvious. Get what you want today and pay less for it. To date, credit cards have been the primary way a consumer can get something today and pay for it tomorrow. But not everyone can get a credit card. To get a credit card here, you need a credit history, and it needs to be in the United States. But over 53 million Americans don't have a credit score, so they can't even get a credit card. And people who've recently immigrated might have the credit history, just not in the right country. Buy now, pay later companies do analyze the potential buyer, but they don't rely on traditional credit scores, and that allows them to offer credit to shoppers that can't get a credit card. In fact, this is the exact reason this payment became popular in the United States. Paying in installments is common in some parts of the world, especially in Brazil and other parts of Latin America. But it hadn't ever caught on in the United States, where consumers preferred credit cards. Well, then Walmart realized that many of its customers wanted to pay for their items over time, but they didn't qualify for credit cards. They didn't even qualify for the Walmart store card. So Walmart partnered with a firm, a startup, to let shoppers pay in installments. And it worked. Suddenly, other stores, especially online stores, realized that if this was working for Walmart, it could work for them too. While it started by catering to consumers who couldn't get credit, the idea has gone mainstream. Now, many consumers who do have credit cards still prefer buy now, pay later. They think it's easier to manage than credit card debt. You see, with credit cards, you have to pay the full balance at the end of every month. If you don't, you start paying interest. And if you can't pay the full amount, a lump sum balance rolls forward from month to month. And for consumers that carry credit card balances, there's no end in sight. There's no term to a credit card loan. It just seems to go on forever. But with buy now, pay later, a $200 purchase spread over 4 monthly installments has a beginning and an end, and no interest. And if consumers pay on time, there are no fees either. Wait, no fees? So how do these companies make money? The answer is they charge the retailer, usually 3% of the total purchase. And why do retailers pay the charge? 3 reasons: cart abandonment, average order size, and order frequency. Consumers often put items in their shopping cart, and then they get to the checkout page, and for whatever reason, they don't order. This is called cart abandonment, and it has many causes. It could be password issues. It could be that having to enter a credit card makes them think twice, or it could be that the price is just too high. But if, say, a $200 item only requires a $50 payment today, and if you don't even need to enter a credit card number, well, that sounds more reasonable, and more consumers continue with the purchase rather than abandon the cart, and the store makes their money. There are two other reasons retailers like buy now, pay later, average order size, and order frequency. Afterpay is one of the buy now, pay later firms. They have a special page where they explain their service to retailers. And on that page, they cite two compelling statistics. First, shoppers who use Afterpay spend 40% more per order, and those same shoppers complete 50% more transactions. So retailers then are all too happy to pay the 3% fees these companies charge because they know that with this option, their customers will buy more and buy more often. So, what's not to like? SF Gate is a website based in San Francisco where many of these buy now, pay later companies are based. And SF Gate found that Generation Z is spiraling into debt by using buy now, pay later. On Monday's lesson, I'll tell you what that investigation found and why it's worrying. I will say this. It's not easy to establish a credit history and credit score if you just move here from another country. And there are so many advantages to having a credit card, even if you don't use it to borrow. And those advantages are not available to people without a credit score. So I do appreciate that buy now, pay later can help someone spread out payments for something big, like a flight or a new appliance or something. But as we'll see next week, a lot of people are buying everyday things this way, and I'd think twice about doing that. Speaking of which, today's English expression is think twice. This is an expression we use when we're having doubts. Today, I'm going to give you 3 ways to use this very common English expression. The first is the simplest. You use it when you're having or you had doubts about something, and especially when you decide not to do something or decide to change your behavior. We talked a few weeks ago about inflation. A lot of consumers are finding their budgets cramped, especially with gas. Now, some drivers are thinking twice before taking unnecessary trips. What does that mean? Some drivers are thinking twice before taking unnecessary trips. That means that some drivers are now having doubts about taking an unnecessary trip, so they modify their behavior. Maybe that means they take fewer trips. Maybe it means when they go out, they combine errands into one trip to the store. Maybe it means they carpool to work. Or maybe it just means they consider it carefully, where before they wouldn't worry about driving. With gas prices high, many drivers are thinking twice about taking unnecessary trips. In today's lesson, we talked about cart abandonment. Online shoppers often put items in their cart. They get to the checkout page, but they don't buy for some reason. The word in the industry to describe this is friction. Every time a consumer has to do something themselves, well, that's an opportunity to stop and abandon the cart. Because every time a consumer has to do something, it could cause that consumer to think twice, to have some doubts. If a consumer has to enter a password to complete a purchase, that could cause the shopper to think twice, to have some doubts about whether they really need it. The same is true with entering a credit card number. The simple fact of entering a credit card number makes you think twice. It makes you think about the process of paying for the product or the service. And that's why retailers like buy now, pay later options. It seems like less money, and the consumers don't have to enter a credit card number. So the next way to use think twice is to give advice. And this is very common. Often we want to give advice without exactly telling another person what to do. Think twice is a great way to advise someone not to do something without being too pushy. So now imagine you have a friend and he's thinking about signing up for a sports gambling app or website. Now, you might think that's a bad idea, but you don't want to tell your friend what to do or what not to do. But you still want to give that friend some advice. So you might say, I would think twice before getting involved in sports betting. It can quickly get out of control. So by saying, I would think twice before, or you should think twice before, you're saying that the person should consider it carefully, and you're also expressing your own doubts about whether it's a good idea. I go to a grocery store that has great fruits, vegetables, dairy, and other packaged goods. They also have good prices. It's called harvest time. But I don't buy meat there. I don't think their meat is very good. Now, if someone asks me for advice on where to buy groceries, I might say, I recommend harvest time, but I'd think twice before buying meat there. That's a softer, more polite way to give advice. Sure, buy the meat there if you really want to, but my advice is to buy meat somewhere else. Now, there are two more ways to use think twice, both in the negative. First, if you do recommend something, you can say, I wouldn't think twice before. So, do you need a good podcast producer? Maybe someone to handle your email marketing? I wouldn't think twice before hiring JR to do it. That means you shouldn't have any doubts about having JR edit your audio and videos because he does a great job for plain English. Now, finally, you can say, I didn't think twice in the past if you want to say you didn't give something much consideration, especially if you regret it. I remember years ago, I got stuck in a major snowstorm driving between Detroit and Chicago. I didn't think twice before going out for a long drive that day. I just didn't give it much consideration. I didn't look at the weather forecast. I didn't think twice. But I did regret it because that trip wasn't very safe. Today's song of the week is Allentown by Billy Joel. Allentown is a city in Pennsylvania. I went to college there. And the song came out in 1982, and it tells the story of blue-collar workers in steel plants that were shutting down in the area. A big part of our country was wealthy and prosperous from manufacturing in the middle of the 20th century, but a lot of manufacturing went overseas, and cities in the Rust Belt of the Midwest declined. And a lot of people who used to have careers in manufacturing felt disappointed or left behind. And Allentown is a song about that difficult transition. Now, if you're ever asked a trivia question about what city Billy Joel was singing about in the song Allentown, the answer is Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. But Allentown, just about 15 minutes away, sounded better in the melody, so he called it Allentown instead. Well, that's all for today, Thursday, May 26th, 2022. When you hear this, I will be on vacation in Florida, and it will be a well-deserved vacation. This spring, Chicago had more rainy days than in any other spring in over 60 years. It was one day after another. Rain, gray, cold, all spring long. I didn't think twice before booking my ticket to Florida after I was invited by my family. Well, don't worry, I might be on vacation, but Plain English continues every week, every Monday and Thursday, no matter what, 52 weeks a year we do this. And remember that the full lesson is online at plainenglish.com/471, and we'll be back on Monday with the follow-up to today's lesson about the hazards of buy now, pay later for Gen Z shoppers. See you then.